9th of July 1931,
That's what is your birthday? Okay.
and I was born at Brampton in Cumberland.
Awesome.
The middle part of my name, Edwin, was
Mm.
after my father and grandfather, and my father worked on the farms.
Hmm. Where did Michael come from?
That would have been mum or dad's choice.
Okay.
There's no other Michael Larkham in our immediate family.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So, what's the most important lesson your parents taught you? So, I guess like your dad and then your mum.
I think it was probably not to have rows indoors.
That's a good one.
Dad never earned very much money, and I know that they did argue from time to time about money.
Mm.
My earliest memory is with my father and Uncle Headley standing over a rabbit berry at the bottom of Hook End Lane on the right hand side, where the hedge got thicker as a result of an increase in the slope from the road to the field. And there was a rabbit berry there, and Headley and my dad were ferreting rabbits, and I was hauled along to get me out of the way of mother, I assume.
Yeah.
But I was very, very young and couldn't have been more than, I don't know, 4 or 5.
Mm. So, sort of 1936, 35, that kind
Uh,
of thing.
yeah, 35, 36, yes.
Mm. Cool. Okay, so there's the next set. So, just sort of different family members. So, your mum, Hilda Gilby. Um,
Yeah, well, she was the second child of E.C. Gilby, Edward Christopher Gilby,
hmm.
and Susanna Amelia. Um,
Hayward?
yes, Susanna Amelia Hayward. And my grandfather was in the First War. He was wounded, and he had a number of jobs afterwards, principally as a salesman. And during the war, he was in the City of London fire watching every night, where they would be on the top of the flat roof buildings with their stirrup pumps, etc.,
Mm.
waiting for incendiary bombs to come down. And later they moved after my great grandfather died. They had been living with him. My gran had been looking after my great grandfather and my great grandmother actually until she
So,
died.
which great grandparents were those?
William Hayward.
Hayward. Okay.
Yeah.
Was he the one never got out of his bed?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. After he died, my grandmother's brothers, um, they took everything,
Hmm.
the house, silver, everything that was there. My grandmother emerged with virtually nothing,
Hmm.
and they moved. So she and Ted Gilby moved down to Ashampstead,
Hmm.
where they rented a cottage in a row of 3 opposite the playing field.
Hmm.
That's where my grandfather died of stomach cancer. In the house he died there, and Gran lived there for a couple more years, and then was moved to one of the council bungalows about 200 yards away from there,
Hmm.
and she lived there until she died on her way to the Isle of Wight with her son Bill and his wife Jane. She completed the journey in their car, and they stopped outside Beggar's Roost, and I said cheerio to her, and her old blue eyes looking up at me, sparkling away, and there appeared to be nothing wrong with her. but as soon as she got into the house on the Isle of Wight, she killed over and died on the spot. Anyway, now what else?
So you got
Oh yeah, my mother was
yeah.
obviously the daughter. She was educated in London at I don't know the name of the school. It was a girls' school, and they moved down for a while to Stubbles, Ashhampstead, where great grandfather rented a house for them next door to where my father lived with his parents. My father did the garden and looked after a cow and one or two other things, and took up with mother, and they became married. She did work. She worked at somebody called Rawls Chicken Farm at Bowden Bends on the way to Pangbourne. She worked there for a while, and I know she kept a horse. Or there's a horse kept before they were married, of course. They had a horse, and she used to ride around the place, the village. That's all I remember of her activities. She helped Dad at Stubbles with the pigs at times when he worked for Austin, and never learned to drive, and generally was a housewife, full stop.
Yeah.
Now what else is there?
So what about your dad's parents, and then you could talk about your dad after that, maybe.
Well,
So Edwin Larkham
yeah,
and
Charlie Larkham,
Hmm.
Charles Edwin.
Hmm.
He was about my size. He worked at various places locally with the brick kiln, and of course everywhere they went they had to walk. I mean, he walked to work and walked home again. Apparently at the brick kiln they were working in the heat of the bricks in some of these kilns, and his feet became very bad as a result of it. And the time I really remember him was later in his life when he was on two sticks all the time. And he was, well, a Christian, but they were chapel as opposed to church. Now, in those days, there was a difference, purely, no doubt, snobbery,
Okay.
and but they were chapel people. I don't remember anything other than that of him. He was a little old man on two sticks when I knew him,
Yeah.
and
Gosh.
he'd had his day by then.
Yeah.
My grandmother,
Hmm.
Emily Marshall from Aldworth, she raised a very large family. They raised 10 children out of 10 births.
Wow.
One was killed on the Somme.
Yeah, that's coming up.
Yeah.
Those questions. So then, just your dad.
And anyway, she raised these 10 children out
Yeah.
of 10 births, and it was looked upon as a very respectable family.
Hmm.
And everybody had jobs, and as I say, the photographs I've seen of them, they were all dressed in suits and that sort of thing, because everybody had a Sunday suit. But they were a hard-working, honest family, and that's all I can really say about them. They all worked all their lives.
Yeah.
Nobody was ever on the dole, that sort of thing.
Hmm. And then now your dad.
Well,
That would have been a bit.
as far as my father's concerned, as I say, he worked for my grandparents when they lived at, and great-grandfather, when they had the Stubbles house that Austin went into eventually. He worked for them, and formed an attachment with mother, and whose parents he worked for. And then they'd married her. He went to, it was in the early 30s, the start of the 30s, the beginning of the 30s. He got a job on a poultry farm in Cumberland, as I mentioned, where I was born, and then they later moved to a job in Middle of Salisbury Plain. I can't recall the name of the town. Oh, I know it if I saw it, but I can't recall it.
Yeah.
Anyway, they lived in this town of Salisbury Plain for a year or two, and then came to Council House in Ashempstead, which of course was his home village anyway.
Mm.
And the council house was at Stubbles, and that again was a couple of 100 yards from where his parents lived and where he grew up anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
He ran Austin's pig farm all the time. It was a pig farm until Austin gave up, and I took over to give Dad a job. And then he worked for me basically until we had built Clayhanger, and then I passed the tenancy and the pigs that were on the farm there at Stubbles over to Colin, my brother, as long as he kept father on. So Dad stayed working there until he could work no longer. But he was dead at 71, which wasn't very long.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Now, my mother's father, Edward Christopher Gilby, as I said earlier, well, I knew him. He was a salesman. He'd been in the Great War and was wounded, but when he came back, he was a salesman for I think he was selling gloves or something like that, because gloves were a big thing in those days. All ladies always wore gloves when they left the house and that sort of thing. And I got on with him very, very well. I called him Little Grandpa, because I had a great grandpa. And from when I was tiny, he was Little Grandpa. And I got on with him extremely well. And as I say, he did die of cancer, and it was all very unfortunate.
Yeah.
And Susanna Amelia Hayward, he married her, and they had the 2 children. And my gran, I always thought was a wonderful person. I used to go to London during the Blitz, and a couple of times it got so hot, it got so intense, we came down and got under the, I think it was the Morrison shelter, which was a heavy steel table in the dining room with mesh round the sides, and we sat under there 2 or 3 times during raids, because I used to go up there. It might sound crazy now, but I used to go up there during school holidays, and the Blitz was on, but Mother said, well, if your name is on a bomb, it will get you in Ashempstead or in London, so go to London. So I used to love my time spent in London with my grandparents, and played a lot in the park opposite Wells Park, and made a couple of friends actually who hadn't been evacuated, and used to spend a lot of time with them every time I went up there. I can't tell you much more about Susanna. She did drive. She was quite an early motorist for Ashempstead, and that is really all I know. She was a first-class mother and grandmother, and as I say, I greatly loved my grandparents. On my mother's side, I had much more to do with them really than on my dad's side, even though they lived farther away.
Yeah.
Do you remember William Hayward?
So
Well,
the great grandfather.
Yeah, I remember my great grandfather. He's quite a large man, and he passed me. He had 2 enormous, well-bound bird books,
Hmm.
And even when I was quite small, I was always interested in birds and the countryside. And anyway, we used to get these bird books out, him and I, and we would have a look at them. And he promised me those when he died, and in fact they did come through to me.
Hmm.
Um, he had this factory in London that produced the very ornate gilt picture frames that were all the thing in I suppose the late 1800s and the very early 1900s. Um, he had a number of outlets, and we have a couple of large home engineering books that contain a full-page advert for him, for his factory and for his various outlets. I went up there a couple of times, and what stood out most was the smell of the glue.
Mm.
In those days, glue was made from the hooves of horses and cattle, and it really did. It had to be boiled up every time it was used, or kept boiling, or kept hot, and it had a really different, pleasant smell to it.
Mm.
That's all. He was a mason, which in those days was quite an important thing, to be invited to become a mason. And he was a mason for until he died. And things scoffed at nowadays, but in those days they did a lot of good for the community, and were, I think, quite highly respected people.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Do you remember his wife at all?
Oh yes, my great grandmother. I remember her, and my mother went to London and lived there while she died. She died in the house at 9 Longton Avenue, and I can remember her. And every day while I was there, she had the milkman who delivered every day with a horse and cart, and the horse stopped at every house it knew it had to stop at, and she bought me, or had delivered to us, a carton of cream, which I drank every morning. I loved cream in those days.
Yeah.
She was a lovely little old lady.
Yeah. I suppose you were the first grandson they had,
Oh,
or
yeah.
great grandchild.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool. And then I don't think on the other side you would have had, like, Ted's parents weren't alive. Or,
No, I didn't know them,
or
and I didn't know my great-grandparents on the Larkham side.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess we can go straight to what you remember about World War II. Those sort of.
Well, I can remember distinctly never dreaming that we would lose. My grandfather, Ted E.C. Gilby, he always said that we had the greatest soldiers in the world, and had we linked up with Germany instead of fighting them, the two of us could have ruled the world. Anyway, what I remember, I think, is the bombing and the anti-aircraft fire when I was up in London. I was there on the day they set the docks on fire, and it's reputed you could have read a newspaper in the street at midnight from the light. I can remember seeing the sky full of German planes. Winston Churchill did not invent carpet bombing.
No.
The Germans were doing it in 41, and I saw dozens of their planes in the sky over London, and the Stuka bomber wasn't used because we had barrage balloons all over the place, and these went up. They were big balloons, and they were up on a cable, winched up, held to a truck with a number of dangling cables from them. And as I say, Hitler did not use the Stuka dive bombers, and I think that was the reason why. The rest of his bombers, Junkers 88s and all those, they were there, and you heard the ack fire, and you saw the shells bursting up there, because they came over this was during the day, and I can remember we would sort of just stand and watch. And we were living in London.
Yeah.
But London being so big, I mean, he couldn't plaster all of it, but he had a good try. The worst of the things they dropped were called landmines. They would come down on a parachute and they would explode, and they would lay waste to what in America or Canada would be known as a block. They were very, very destructive, were these landmines. The whole areas were just flattened, and as I say, I had a couple of friends, and we went into a couple of places that had been emptied, all the windows gone, the roof's gone, and we used to scramble about in them looking for stuff. And I can remember finding a hymn book and a Bible that were about 3 inches by 2 inches, tiny, tiny writing in a little leather case. It's the only thing I ever looted.
Yeah.
But that had been left behind and hadn't been destroyed. I don't know what else I can say. I remember about the war, other than the firm conviction that we would never lose it.
Yeah.
Which was probably due to my extreme youth and and Ted Gilby's enthusiasm.
Yeah. You did mention once that you were out in Ashampstead and you came across a fallen bomber or a crashed bomber.
Oh,
was that
a Wellington
the war?
bomber. Yeah, it was a Wellington bomber training at the and we used to fly operations from Hampstead Norris Aerodrome, and quite often one would crash. And of course, lads, as soon as we could get near it, I mean, once the Air Force had taken away the engines and the fuselage and all they could pick up, there's always stuff left, and there's always lots of machine gun ammo. We would pull out the bullet, which you could do with a pair of pliers, and we could then fish out the cordite that was in there. The cordite is little short round sticks with a hole down the middle, and you could loosen by poking a needle into the hole of some of the sticks in the middle and pulling them out. And once you'd loosened it all, the rest would tip out. And we used to use this cordite just to set fire to and muck about with. Anyway, we went to one crash site in the woods near Southridge, but only probably in direct flight a mile from the aerodrome. He obviously was trying to get back, and he crashed about a mile before the aerodrome. And we were poking about there, and there's something sticking out of the ground, and Stuart Page and I pulled this thing out, and it was a bomb. It was an unexploded bomb that either got stuck in the bomb bays when they were on the raid, or, well, I don't know. It shouldn't have been there, and of course the Air Force people should have found it when they collected as much as they could of the aircraft. Anyway, we pulled this thing out of the ground, and you could see a line where the nose cone joined the rest of the bomb. And we unscrewed it, and there's like a pin in there which we took out. Anyway, we left it, and cycled up to the airdrome at Hampstead Norris, and went to the guard. There's always a guard there, an armed guard at the gate, and told him, and then we had to go inside and explain to somebody else. I don't know if it was an officer or a sergeant. Anyway, he was a bit miffed about it all, but we told him where to go and look for this bomb, and they told us never to do anything like that again, and to stay away from any crashes. And anyway, it's quite funny, really.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah, kids, if you're watching, do not disable a bomb. Yeah. What about like D-Day victory and all of that?
Well, yes, we had there were VE Day celebrations, Victory in Europe, VE Day, and we had a bonfire in the chalk pit opposite what was then the New Inn, a little way up the hill towards Quicks Green, and half the village got down there, and we were getting lots of wood and stuff out of the adjacent wood. Obviously keepers didn't worry about that that sort of night, and as I say, we had a wonderful bonfire there, and nearly marred by there was a fence around the top of it that rotted away, and Stuart Page found picked up a wrench off a fence post and threw it down to be put on a bonfire. Unfortunately, I forget the kiddie's name now. Somebody walked under it, and it hit him on the head, but it didn't really affect him. He had a bit of blood, but I mean, he was okay. I can remember that bonfire was somewhat marred by some recriminations about how we got the fuel for the fire. Anyway, he was all right. He grew up anyway.
Cool. Yeah. Well, very good. Yeah. So you had one uncle on your mum's side, and then basically 9 uncles and aunts on your dad's side.
Yeah. Well, I didn't.
Yeah.
But the oldest 2, I knew my Uncle Bill on mother's side.
Yeah.
He was in the Territorial Army before the war, and then got called up and joined rather at the start of the war, because he was in the Territorials, and he was given a commission and everything that went with it, the sword and all that, and he went to Norway, and in the end they got driven out of Norway by the Germans. And I don't know how he spent the rest of the war, but after the war he became the picture buyer for Harrods. He had a very good job with Harrods, and I don't know how much of it was due to his war service or what he knew about art, but he was the head of the picture department and the buyer for that department.
Yeah, reading some of his letters as a kid, he was in France or something.
Yeah, learning the glove trade.
Okay.
Yeah, because everybody wore gloves in those days, and ladies all had gloves, and there's very, very nice leather gloves to be had. But today it's gone out of fashion.
Yeah. And he was like a bachelor his whole life.
No, he married Aunt Jane.
Okay.
I don't know exactly. She was always known as Doll.
Okay. Yeah.
They never had children, and she always said her father was an antique dealer, but mother always said he was a rag-and-bone man. So you can decide what you want to decide from that.
Yeah.
On the children on the Larkham side, of course, I never knew Walter, and one was always known as Tyne, but his name was really George. The Tyne was an abbreviation of Tiny, because when he was small, he was pretty small.
Right.
And he was known as Tiny, but as he grew up, he was known as Tyne. And it wasn't until later, Gwen and I discovered that his name, in fact, was George. Well, he and Walter emigrated to Australia before the war, and then came back to fight with an Australian regiment. Well, um, as you know, Walter was killed on the Somme, um, and his brother George survived the Somme and went back to Australia with the regiment when after the war. And then apparently he drowned. He worked on a farm there or something, and he went fishing.
Mm.
They found his horse tied to a tree and his fishing tackle on the bank, but there was no sign of him or his body. His body was never ever found.
Mm.
I don't know whether the crocodiles came up that far. There are crocodiles, or were crocodiles, in parts of Australia
Mm.
nearer the coast. Whether one of those got him, no one knows. But a body was never ever found.
Wow.
The rest, of course, I knew.
Mm.
You know, my Betty's mother,
Right.
Rose, I hardly knew. She married a Swedish person and lived in Algiers for quite a bit, and I never knew her.
No.
But the rest, Lil, May, Edley, Arthur, Aunt Hilda, and Gladys, of course, I all knew.
Yeah. Okay. Any sort of like things that stick out about them, personality-wise, or character? Anything
Uh,
like that?
no, Gladys eventually married Cyril, but she didn't marry him when she should have done because she was looking after her mother. The old girl, I think, was very selfish about it all, and so Gladys and Cyril didn't get married until late, too late to have children. And there's nothing else much to be said about the rest. They all had sort of husbands or wives and children. I've never met any of Arthur's children after he moved away from the village. I never saw him again. I don't think anybody else did, although he only lived the other side of Reading. Headley had one son. What was his name? Yes, Alan.
Yeah.
Headley and May. Headley married the licensee's daughter from the New Inn at the bottom of the hill. And they had one son, Alan, who, well, I think he had a job most of the time, but he became quite a pretty good cricketer, and when he played for Ashampstead, I sort of brought him on a bit, and people were telling him not to bowl fast. Anyway, I encouraged him to bowl fast, and he became a very good fast bowler. But halfway through one season, he went and joined Yattendon, and that was the first game he played for Yattendon. It happened to be against Ashampstead. And of course, he was a very good fast bowler by then, and he went through Ashampstead like a dose of salt, quite deliberately, and I never spoke to him again.
Yeah.
To this day. Nor do I have any wish to.
Yeah. Quite right.
He became quite a... apparently, I didn't know he could write even, but he used to write an article for the Newbury Weekly News on darts or something. And as I say, I wasn't even sure he could write, but he obviously must have been able to.
Yeah.
And that is all I can really say about the rest. Lillian, May's daughter Betty is a very good friend of ours today up at Woodcote. I've always got on with her, but she never had children. And Lillian had Robin. She married Bill Palmer. So Robin Palmer is a cousin, and he went as an apprentice to Pulsometer Engineering in Reading, and they were taken over eventually by an American company. But anyway, he went from being an apprentice to the managing director. played a fair amount of cricket, but not as much as he might have done. I think he broke a thumb or something catching the ball, and I don't think his mother let him play very much after that. He lives about 2 miles from here, and I never ever see him.
Mm.
No one has any contact. Betty, his other cousin around here, he has absolutely nothing to do with. They live in a bungalow. The bungalow he's lived in now all his married life. How he became managing director of an outfit, I really don't know.
Mm.
But he did, and today his health isn't up to much. His feet are bad and all this sort of thing. But I really feel he could have taken a bigger part in the village or in the family, but he has chosen not to.
Mm.
So that's the end of that one.
Yeah.
How did I meet your gran?
Yeah.
Well, she moved into the village, and we had a very good youth club in those days in what was known as the Green Hut. It's no longer standing, and I wasn't running it, but I had a bit to do with it, and Gwen turned up one evening with one of the girls from the village, and I was introduced to her and all that sort of thing. And anyway, I certainly thought she was gorgeous. Well, she was gorgeous. I didn't just think she was gorgeous. She was gorgeous. And of course, going home time, it was dark. And so I offered to see her home in the dark. Anyway, we got up about as far as Tom Jones' house, bungalow, which was about 100 yards from the Green Hut, and we sort of bumped into one another. I said, well, I better hold on to you. I don't want to lose you in the dark, do I? So I put my arm around her, and we walked. I walked her back home, and that's how it started. And I knew, well, I thought, and she was, she was a good table tennis player, and she could talk very nicely, and she was absolutely gorgeous. And I thought, I'm going to keep an eye on this one. Anyway, within, well, I don't know, a few weeks, it was obvious to me that I always wanted to be with her. And after that, I saw her virtually every day or every evening. And when I went in the Air Force, I used to write to her a couple of times a week and see her every weekend I was home. And for the last 18 months I was in the Air Force, I was home every weekend, bar one. When I was on what they used to call Jankers, I was confined to camp for writing off one of their motorbikes. But anyway, she was obviously, after a while, the girl for me. And there was a drawback. I was the oldest in my family, and she was the oldest in hers, and there's no way we could have married and lived with either our parents, like some people were able to. So we sort of resolved that we would be married, and it would be into our own home. So after 4 years, we became officially engaged, and it took us another 4 years to see built Beggar's Roost. And then we got married before it was completely furnished. But we were married after 8 years courtship, and that really was the foundation of everything that we did afterwards. The fact that we had our own house right up front, without a tremendous mortgage. We got a mortgage from the local council. In those days, councils were able to be in the mortgage business, if you like, and we got a mortgage from the Bradfield RDC, and that enabled us to build Beggar's Roost. Only it wasn't a particularly big mortgage because of the way we built it. I did all the labouring, and Dick Knight, who we met as a result of me being recommended to talk to him, he set it out, all the measurements on the ground, and drove in the little stakes for me to dig to, and we started. I cut the bank from the road into the building plot at Easter, and it was finished, and we got married on, what's the date we got married?
August.
Yeah. And
August 13th.
we started in Easter, and we got married in August.
Yeah.
And but I did all the digging, we did all the concreting. Basil helped me with some of it. We did put down all floorboards. We did the decorating. Dick Knight recommended various tradesmen, bricklayer, carpenter, plumber, electrician. But all the labouring work we did, and the decorating we did. And it turned out to be the best thing we could possibly have done, because we had our own home. We didn't pay anybody any rent ever. We had our own home right up front, and it was worth the sacrifice and the effort to put that in place, because that really has been the key to everything we've been able to do since. We built it for £2,000, and we sold it for £19,500 when that's after we had built Clayhanger.
Yeah. Cool.
And so it was the best thing we could possibly have done. Today, people, and it meant a lot of saving, a lot of going without, which people do not want to do today. And they're forever moaning today because they can't get a house. Well, of course they can't get a house. They don't save enough money for a deposit.
Yeah.
Well, engagement, the engagement was a normal engagement. I can't remember much about a party or anything. I don't even remember the circumstances on which I put the ring on her finger. But we knew from 3 years before that we would become engaged and married. And so it was just a progression of events.
Yeah.
The wedding itself was a normal village wedding, lots of guests, lots of photographs. Stuart Page was my best man. I started school at Ashhamsted the same day that Stuart did. We were exactly the same age. We played all our cricket together. 20 seasons of cricket we played together. He was my best friend and my best man, and I was best man at his wedding. We went by train to Bournemouth for our honeymoon, which was a week in a hotel down there. We went by train because I didn't have a car. I had a motorbike, obviously, but I didn't have a car, and it was just a normal sort of, for that time, a normal honeymoon. We didn't go anywhere abroad, fancy like they do now. They make such a thing of it now and spend money that they really can ill afford to spend when 2/3 of them separate within a number of years anyway.
Yeah. What was it like the day Karen was born?
Well, I do know it was a 24-hour birth.
Cool.
I know that the doctor was upset with me because that was the second one. The ambulance was outside the door,
Right.
because it had been such a long birth. The doctor was a bit apprehensive. We had the nurses were the local nurses were also midwives. We had the two nurses there because they always worked together, and Dr. Spafford. And in the end, he used the I think they call them forceps or something to help Karen out. She was sort of pulled out in the end. And that is really all I can remember about it. It was a long sort of day, but in those days, well, I wasn't in the bedroom, of course.
Yeah.
I didn't believe it was the place for a man to be, but nowadays a lot of men do want to be there when the child is born, but I would not have wanted to have seen Gwen in pain for that period of time. And so I was confined to downstairs, which is what the nurses wanted anyway. And the same applied to Sarah, and the same to Ed. The ambulance was there every time. On one occasion, we had a different doctor, and he was quite nasty with me because I wouldn't let Gwen go to the ambulance because she didn't want to go to the ambulance. The doctor wanted her to be taken out of bed and dumped in the ambulance, but Gwen didn't want to go, and I said no, she doesn't want to go, and he didn't like it a bit. Anyway, that was the three born in the same bedroom at Beggar's Roost, and that was the story behind each of them. They were all long, drawn-out births.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what was life like after you had all the kids and sort of?
Well, it didn't make that much difference to me. Gwen had been, I suppose, well instructed by her mother on how to raise children, and what we never disagreed on anything that Gwen said to the children. They knew it's no good if Gwen said no, it was no good coming to me for me to overrule her. There's never anything like that, and that's why they grew up in the way that they did, to be the people, because they know right from day one that the wisdom of their mother was to be listened to, and that's what it's like. Gwen looked after them. Anytime anybody, I never changed a nappy, which some people find very strange, but I did. If anybody vomited, I cleared it up.
Yeah, give and take.
Yeah, I didn't do nappies, but I would do vomit. But other than that, I mean, my life really carried on as before. I mean, I still have my trials motorbike. I still rode trials. I played cricket for a long time until we took the pig farm. I gave up cricket after we took the pigs. I wasn't going to be playing cricket when I could be working with the pigs and with the barn, with the buildings. That's what life was like. It went on for me pretty much the same because of Gwen's efforts. And she was a very, very good mother.
Yeah. So this one's what do you think of science advancing? So sort of the moon landing, vaccine, like technology sort of coming into your guys' daily lives.
Well, it's overtaken me, I'm afraid. Computers are, in a way, very, very, very good things. But they've taken away so many jobs from people, which maybe we couldn't have filled today anyway. But there's so many jobs computers eliminated, within factories and within offices. There's no more shorthand typists and that sort of thing. There used to be hundreds of them. Can't do without science, obviously. So, I'm all in favour of science, but it does adversely affect some people.
Yeah. Okay, so why did you and Gran decide to emigrate to Canada?
We, at the time, we built Clayhanger, wonderful house, wonderful view, but there was a lot of unrest in the country over immigration and that sort of thing. There were towns even then where whites or parts of towns,
Mm.
places, streets where whites were even warned away.
Mm.
And we had a politician called Enoch Powell who chose to highlight it with a bit of a not a little bit of maybe an over the top speech talking about rivers of blood and giving figures as to the number of immigrants in the place and that, in the country and that sort of thing. Well, he was decried, called every name politicians could and newspaper people could lay on him.
Mm.
He was kicked out of the party and all. But he, in fact, it has been proved that he was telling the truth, and his figures were, in fact, under what was actually going on.
Right.
So he was totally discredited by other politicians, and basically for speaking the truth. And there have been riots in London. I can't think of the names of the suburbs in London where some of these riots have taken place, but there have been some pretty bloody riots over, up to 10 years ago.
Yeah.
That was one of the reasons. And I thought, well, let's get out now while we can. People, Percy, people like that said we were mad, we built this wonderful house, wonderful position. But I could also see that we couldn't get any bigger. And small pig farms really were going to be a thing of the past, because with the new EC regulations and all that sort of thing, small local abattoirs were going to be closed. Well, that would have made it very, very difficult for people like us who would only ship 12, 15, 20 pigs a week. Where would we sell them? We'd be in the hands of hauliers or buyers who would be able to dictate terms. And so I was concerned about our future farming. And as far as the hog farms are concerned, I was right. There are no small hog farms. There haven't been any smaller hog farms. And 150 sows is a small hog farm. And they disappeared years ago. So that's one reason for going, plus Enoch Powell and the general political scene. And I thought, well, let's go out, get our kids out while we're able to. Well, I didn't fancy Australia because it was too far away. I fancied Canada and British Columbia in particular. Well, we went to the embassy in London, and the fella said, well, if you want to go farming, Alberta is the place to go. Well, we went over, we previously met Olive and Dennis Mannering, who were living on Vancouver Island, and they were living in Vancouver. They were living in Vancouver. They'd come over to England on a trip because Dennis had lived he knew someone who'd lived at Yattendon, had been in the Royal Air Force with them. And anyway, they came over and we had put an advert for information. We'd asked some realtors over there to let us have some adverts on hog farms for sale. Anyway, Olive was a realtor, and she saw this, and they knew they were coming to England to our area. And so they phoned, and they said, well, yes, come. And they stayed with us a couple of nights. And we got on so well with them that as soon as we started to make arrangements to go, Dennis set up a bank account for me in Burnaby, and when we went, you're only allowed to take, I don't know, £5,000 or something, because of money control, the currency controls. You weren't allowed to take any more than £5,000 with you. So I was on the road for Rum River as well as having the farm, and I knew a lot of people. So those I knew I could trust, I furnished them 200 with £200 each in cash, which they sent to Dennis.
Mm.
They wrote a cheque on their own money on their own bank, having taken my 200,
Yeah.
and that way we got another, I don't know, £6,000-8,000 over to this bank account.
Yeah.
The bank in England wanted to know, well, what are you doing with all this cash? Because I was giving these people 200 in cash,
Yeah.
you see, and there's 30 odd of them. And I said, oh, well, I do a bit of cattle trading up north, and they like to deal in cash. Because I couldn't tell them I was
No.
sending out the country because we had currency control.
Yeah. Cool.
So
do you remember some of the people you entrusted with that
well,
task?
they were the buyers and estimators in various firms who I dealt with for some years and who I'd entertained regularly and got on with regularly, and various friends here like Ben Percy and stuff like that. There's a lot of people involved. Anyway, every one of them.
Gosh.
Yeah, nothing went astray, every one of them, and it was there waiting for us when we got there. In Alberta, because when we went to the embassy in London for our interviews, and I said that we wanted to go farming, and the fellow there said, well, if you want to farm, go to Alberta. Well, we went to BC, to Denhollies, and looked round some hog farms there, and they were tiny hog farms, full of disease and that sort of thing. And then one of his friends lent us a car, and we drove through the Rockies to Alberta. And coming out the Rockies, it was almost like coming home. There's always land stretching out in front of us, flat land, and it felt really good. So from Calgary, we headed north up number 2, and called at a couple of places. PIC, I was producing for PIC in this country, Pig Improvement Corporation, and they had PIC in Acme in Alberta. We called on those people, the prices, and they facilitated a couple of visits to hog farms there, and of course it looked good and everything else. And so we agreed that it would be Alberta we would come to. And in many ways, I'm glad it was Alberta, but it was a disappointment in some ways that the shooting was so poor. I've been given to understand that all these pheasants and grouse and all that sort of thing were there, but in actual fact that is a myth because they're not. I didn't really bargain on 6 months of snow on the ground. That was a bit of a surprise. But other than that, I think Alberta was the place to go. But then I haven't been any further east than Saskatchewan, so I don't know what Quebec or Ontario is like. I've no idea. But BC is very socialist. A lot of people don't realise it, but I find BC to be very socialist. It'd be nice to be by the sea. I would have loved a boat, and we spent quite a bit of time with Denhollies. And as you know, we bought on the island and enjoyed our time on the island. All the time we were there, we enjoyed it. But I think setting up in Alberta turned out to be the thing to do.
Yeah, definitely. When did you take up golf, and how did it change your life?
Well, I was about 52, and Gwen said, look, if you don't start golf soon, you never will. And so I went and had a couple of 3 lessons down at the Golf and Country Club. In those days, we had enough money to go to that sort of place. But I didn't hit a ball on the course that season. We had cows, and there's a lot of ground there. There's a big field in front of the old house, and I used to take balls out in that field, and until I could, you see, I've seen people trying to learn to play golf on the course, and that doesn't work for every other golfer on that course because they muck about and they hold everybody up, and so I thought at the time, until I can hit a ball properly, I'm not going to go on the course. So the first season I had lessons, and I hit hundreds of balls on airfield. Lost a few down the gopher holes, but other than that, it was, I think, the way to go. Take enough training before you venture onto the course itself. But since then, of course, golf has been very important to me from a fitness point of view, and from a skills point of view, and from the competition. I do like competing, A, against the course, and B, against other golfers. And I must say the golf course here in Goring Streatley has been wonderful for me, physically and I think mentally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, do you remember the day you became a grandpa when Adam was born?
Well, all I know was Sarah, I think, was rushed to Edmonton. The doctor said down here, said down in Reddit, oh, he's not going to be born yet. He's not going to be born yet. Well, he was, and that's all really I remember about it.
Yeah. What about other grandchildren, Haley, Josh, Sam, and I?
Well, because everybody lives so far away, we haven't really had much to do with them. And this is one of the problems of emigrating or nowadays moving house. In the old days, people stayed around the villages or the areas, but nowadays people seem to move so far for jobs and for that sort of thing. You don't see as much of your grandchildren as you would have done in the old days. I was different with my grandparents. I used to see them holiday times, but that's all.
Yeah.
It's and that's mother probably wanted to get rid of me out of the way anyway, keep me out of mischief. So it's been a funny setup with me and my grandchildren. We haven't had as much to do with them. But then I've always been busy.
Yeah.
You see, this is I always put work before almost anything else. The job has to be done. It has to be done properly. You can't frig about when you should be working.
Yeah.
And so something has to give. And what it does is you don't have as much contact as you would have liked with other people and your own family.
Yeah.
But that's the way you make your choice and have to live with it.
Yeah. Well, the last 9 questions, they're all sort of wisdom and advice. So
what do you think young people need to learn about money?
Yeah.
Well, what I think they need to learn about money is that it all has to be earned, and it is not to be squandered. I think to squander money is a total absurdity, because you never know when you're going to need it. And if you haven't got it, your lifestyle is limited anyway. I think, look at the people that go to work and they live almost month to month on their salary. If I were young again, I would say, right, there's 10, 15% or whatever of my money goes straight into savings, never to be touched.
Yeah.
And you live on what's left, but that savings will build up. And if you want to get anywhere, house-wise, whatever, that is the only thing you spend your money on. You don't buy a new car because you'd like a new car
Yeah.
and you've got enough money to buy a new car. If you waste that money on a new car, it's put your house in jeopardy or put it a year, 2, 3 years further back. Oh, we can't afford the deposit. Of course they can't afford the bloody deposit because they're always spending all the money they get anyway
Yeah.
on fancy holidays, fancy cars, lots of clothes, must have a night out every week drinking.
Yeah.
That is my advice about money.
Yeah. Why do you think some marriages last 60 plus years and others don't?
Because some people cannot give way, either because they're too stupid or on principle they will not give way. I'm not saying you should give way on everything because no one has predominance of perfect thought.
Yeah.
Some people's ideas do not always measure up and should not be carried into effect.
Yeah.
But you have to be able to compromise. It's no being rigid and saying this is the law in this house or anything approaching that.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to compromise. You've got to be able to talk and negotiate without shouting. That's why some last and some don't.
Yeah. So what advice would you give your grandchildren about life?
First of all, go to one.
Yeah. Yeah. See one.
Well, I suppose really is trying to look on what you've got. Look on look on the good things.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say that's a really
Don't fret about things you can't do anything about. But as I say, just value what you have, your friends, what you've got in your house or your whatever. Just appreciate what you've got all the time.
Yeah. What are you most concerned about with the future? I know Brexit is a big thing.
Yeah. Well, what would I say? Well, obviously drugs. I mean, don't get anywhere near drugs of
Yeah.
any sort. My fear would be, you see, how far is the widening gap between rich and poor going to get? It's that's I don't know that I'm concerned about global warming because I don't know if it's anything that we have done for sure that causes it. I mean, 2 ice ages disappeared of their own accord. The world must have warmed to get rid of both ice ages at different times. Now, that has nothing to do with human activity. So why should this warming be human activity?
Yeah.
I don't know. But of course it is going to be a problem.
Yeah. What do you think is most important to living a long life?
Well, first of all, not being stupid
Yeah.
in how much you eat and drink. I mean, that is, I think, one of the most important things an individual can do. There are a lot of things that are beyond your control, but like motor accident, I mean, it's just, as I say, not becoming obese, which you can prevent. You don't have to eat and drink yourself to death. You don't have to fly about like a mad thing. I know I did on motorbikes at one time and got away with it. But you don't have to do any of that.
Yeah.
Behaving sensibly. I like my whiskey, but I don't get drunk.
Mm.
I like to eat, but I don't get fat because I do not overindulge in any of it.
Yeah.
So I think that is part of it, and plus your mental approach to things. I mean, I don't get all stewed up over anything. There are people that do. They get all stewed up over something, or they go into a depression, all this. I've not experienced any of that because I like to think it's my attitude to things. If you can't think about it, there's nothing you can do. You can't think about it, forget it. If you can do something about it, do it. You got a choice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What do you miss about life 50 years ago? So 1960s, 1950s. Obviously, society's changed a lot. Is there anything that you...
Yeah, you missed dances. There's no proper dancing nowadays like it used to be in the villages. Every village hall would have a dance every month or a couple of months. You could go to a dance every week if you wanted, every Saturday night. And it was proper music you could dance to, not just stand there jiggling. You were proper waltzes and quick steps and foxtrots, polkas. You could do all this sort of thing in the village halls. And that's, I think, what I think made life so nice in those days. You didn't have this sort of simulated violence all the time on your TV with various films or computer generated stuff. There was none of that. And everything young people see nowadays relates to violence. Whatever game or whatever thing you see on your ad or your whatever, it's all violence. Boom, 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 blow him away, all this sort of thing.
Yeah.
And that is what is, I think, ruining society today. There's been 6 knifings in 6 days in London last week. I mean, that's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Because all these kids have grown up with has been violence. That's all they've seen.
Yeah.
Is violent behaviour on that screen. And
or for the sake of entertainment.
Yes,
Yeah.
but I mean, why can't they go back to the sort of thing we used to have at Oklahoma, the musicals, My Fair Lady, Oklahoma, stuff like that. That was wonderful entertainment, lovely music. There's nothing like that now. Most singers now scream and holler and gyrate. It's all so uncouth, if that is the right word. There's nothing gentle about things like it used to be. And that's what I miss.
Yeah. So those problems we talked about, if you could change one thing about modern society, would you, and what would it be?
But I think it would be in the entertainment world, and it would eliminate what I've just described as being, to my mind, intolerable,
Yeah.
and bring back how we used to enjoy life before all this was invented to make somebody rich. Because they're just producing this stuff because they know it'll sell.
Yeah.
And as I say, that is the one thing I would change, is people's entertainment options. Nowadays there isn't an option because everything you see really is, half of it is computer generated violence. And that is what I think is spoiling life and spoils people. It spoils these young fellas. All they've grown up with is violence.
Yeah.
And there's your answer. as I say, they all carry knives, and
Yeah.
the Liberals stop this stop and search thing. The Liberal philosophy, this infringement on their liberty. They must have liberty to stab you if they want to.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's the end of the questions. So thank you for interviewing. I don't know if there's anything else that you'd like to say to the family and everything.
Well, I don't think there is. Their family, I think, should keep on going as the way they are. I mean, you know, you just keep at it, keep trying.
Yeah.
Don't give up. You know, I mean, you've just got to stay with it if you want to get anywhere, or enjoy a reasonable life without money worries and that sort of thing. You've got to stay with it. I saw my mum and dad quarrelling over money, and that set my pattern, if you like, from when I was 10, 11, 12, 13 years old. I've never had a row with Gwen. I wouldn't have a row with Gwen, even well, not now, of course, but I mean, in the past, we've never had a row. She followed me when I said let's go to Canada. She agreed to do it without a brand new house. Yeah, there's no way. She said that's what you want to do. That's what we do. She accepted my arguments. The work ethic is in the family, and that to me is what counts. And they're all fair-minded, decent people, and you know, that's some of it's in my genes, and some of it is in the upbringing. And I'm happy with all of it.
Oh, brilliant! Excellent. Well, thank you again for doing it.
I don't know, I'm a hometown country boy, you know. We've been able to help my mum and dad, we helped Gwen's mum and dad, we've helped all our kids get into places, and I don't think parents can do any more than we've done.
Yeah, exactly. So you wouldn't, if you had your time again, you wouldn't do a whole lot different, would you?
I don't think I would.
No.
No, I think, you know, your mum, your gran has put in so much work that, well, I've been playing, you know, I mean, I used to ride trials, I used to play a lot of cricket, and I'm playing a lot of golf. My life has been very, very good for me. Your mum, your gran thinks it's been good for her with the children. She got 3 wonderful kids, and they all get on with her so well.